Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. La, la, la.
Hi, all. Welcome. It's Wednesday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. Where were we just now?
We just came from the polls. We just came from our closest polling location, which is Western Regional Library in Plantation. And it wasn't as dead as I thought it would be, but it certainly wasn't very lively either. Now, I do think that a lot of it is people do vote by mail now.
Yeah.
So a lot of mail-in ballots are still being.
Well, people are voting by mail, but they're bringing their ballots to the actual. Yeah, they're not putting that in the mailbox. They're doing it through the mail, and then they're bringing the ballots to the.
They don't trust. It's funny. They don't. They get the thing mailed to them on the way out,
right? But
they don't trust the mail to get it back in, which I find just really kind of interesting.
Well, we always say that elections matter most when they're local. And there's a lot of local stuff that's going on.
So I was out supporting our friend Nick Sortel for mayor of Plantation.
Yep.
And I was actually happy to see, as was his wife Robin, who I showed that thing you sent me, that the state party put out a list of mayoral endorsements throughout the state. And in Broward, they did endorse Nick, which is really nice. Especially considering,
And they endorsed Mike Ellen, which was also somewhat surprising as well.
Apparently, our current mayor has the endorsement of the firefighters. And because that, she actually had arranged for them. They were out blocking the road in where the library is and in support of Stoner and not letting, they had the fire trucks out. And so, which is just so obnoxious.
Yeah, but you definitely want their support.
Oh, you definitely want their support, but it's just, I feel like it's unfortunate because chances are the actual firefighters they don't really know. Like what they don't know what's necessarily in their best interest. But apparently it has more to do with their upcoming contract and who knows what Stoner threatened them with. Who knows?
That's politics in a nutshell.
And yes, guys, our mayor's name is Stoner, and she does such a disservice to that name.
She's a downer of a Stoner.
Well, one of the biggest disappointments ever. When I first saw there was someone named Lynn Stoner running for mayor when I lived in Davie, and I saw that, I'm like, I almost wanted to move to Plantation just to have a mayor Stoner. And it turns out she's just so uncool.
Yeah,
she's just so uncool. Like she is the complete opposite. Like it's just she does a disservice.
Well, I think we would be better served with somebody like Nick Sortel. But of course, we have what we call like a residential guest because much like a handful of others, Margaret Kimberly, Steve Grumbine, this is a good friend and the first person who ever interviewed Jen when she ran for Congress. And of course, he is the best of the best when it comes to journalism in the United States, my opinion. Of course, it's maybe biased to some degree, but I think if you really look around about what's really going on these days, you would agree that we really don't have a lot in terms of investigative journalism. But we have Jordan Chariton of Status Quo News. We're grateful for that, and he's here once again. Welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Jordan. What's going on?
Just trucking along here. I'm actually doing double duty because I've begun working on a book, so I'm knee deep into that and my daily grind.
So you're going to be taking off, though. Is that what I saw? Something that you said recently where you said you were going to be taking off for like a month or so, and I wasn't sure if that was professional or personal or both.
Well, I hope to sleep and have some personal time, but no, I'm going to be working full time on the book because it's pretty hard to write a book if you're also doing live streams and videos and traveling and all the other stuff I'm doing.
He does a lot more live streams than we do.
But I'm just saying that we can't even get our crap done on ours either.
No, but I told you, just send me whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way and whatever. So no, I just thought, were you taking family leave? But that's not what you're doing.
Right. I have 4 chapters done. So I'm hoping with a month or two, I'll be able to finish the whole thing. And then there's the whole matter of, trying to find a publisher in this news world. So I'm currently kind of behind the scenes working with somebody to try and find a publisher. It's about Flint to leave the suspense. So
I figured that, but I guess I should have asked that out loud for other people. But yes, See, this is why you're good at what you do. And I'm just like sitting here.
We obviously have a lot to talk about regarding what's transpired in the past 24 to 48 hours, but I think we really should, because the most important thing is what's going on with the workers at the Amazon labor facility up in Albany. We all know that we don't have real labor laws in this country anymore. because union busting is something that has become almost second nature for these oligarchs, especially Jeff Bezos, who's probably the biggest union buster of them all. Although I think the Walton family will probably compete for that once the Walmart workers really start getting their act together. What happened up in Albany? Why did they not unionize?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think Amazon, the union busting that they did in Staten Island, they kind of dialed it up a few notches in Albany. There was, frankly, threats to disabled workers, which I had never seen before. I received audio of workers with disabilities being brought into HR and put under investigation for essentially asking the union busting consultants that Amazon has flooded these warehouses with to leave them alone. One of those workers is now suspended. And also that worker in particular, I learned Amazon HR basically tried to manipulate a worker with a cognitive disability into saying Christian Smalls, the head of the Amazon labor union, had started a fire at the warehouse. So I would say a few things. Number one, if you look at Staten Island, they had a year to organize, which they needed. They needed that year. This warehouse, once they got approval to hold an election, it was like a month or so after that they held the election.
Right.
Secondly, Amazon was very they have more union busting consultants that they're bringing in from out of state than actual like managers at this warehouse. And I was told by a few workers that essentially it's like these consultants are hovering over workers and they're pulling them aside constantly, just propaganda about voting no. Why, if the union passes, we might have to lay people off.
Right.
If the union passes, benefits might get, less generous. And I think that how a couple workers put it to me was, I think it was kind of like a psychological warfare that they made workers think if they voted yes, that Amazon would find out and they could lose their jobs, which of course it's a secret ballot. So Amazon, I wouldn't say definitely couldn't find out, but they're not supposed to find out. But I think, if you're a worker, it's really tough times out there. Most of these workers are paycheck to paycheck. A lot of them work multiple jobs outside of Amazon. If you are intimidated that way, Christian Smalls and the folks at JFK weren't up there full time, obviously, because it's in Albany. It's powerful. They lost by 200 votes, so that is a lot. But technically, if a few things changed, it could have been narrowed. So I think in terms of Amazon, they have all the money in the world to throw this army of union busting consultants in warehouses around the country. Starbucks, they didn't have that level. We're talking like, over 10 to 15 union busting consultants flooding this warehouse. Starbucks did not have it to that level. And of course, the difference is Starbucks, at the most, maybe 30 workers. These warehouses have 800, 900 workers. So there's going to be a lot of, I think there's going to be more lost battles until Amazon workers get kind of that run where you just take off and everyone's voting yes. But I think, there's going to have to be lessons learned, because to me, I kind of compare it to what progressives have dealt with the flood of super PAC money coming into primaries. It's kind of similar where these workers, it's just a flood of propaganda and union busting consultants really making them fear voting yes.
I was going to say that. I was going to say this sounds like an electoral politics system where, you can't do that kind of campaign in a month. Like that's something that probably takes multiple tries, just like we deal with as the left challenging incumbents. It's the same thing. Like it's something that takes sort of like chipping away. So the fact that they're even making this much progress is still somewhat inspired to me, because it still was, where were we 2 years ago on any of that? Like it's still, I don't know. I feel somewhat hopeful.
I also think that the broader issue here that, I don't know if there's a solution imminently, is there's no real labor laws in this country. Example, like I said, you have a worker with a disability pulled into HR, They say he's under investigation. He's not even allowed to have another worker there as a witness. He's not capable. He has a cognitive impairment of really sticking up for himself. Then they try to rope him into, blaming a fire on Christian Smalls when he says, no, Christian didn't start the fire. They then ask, did you start the fire? He says, no. Well, did somebody from the Amazon labor union start the fire? He says, no. They escort him out and suspend him. There's no labor laws other than for them to file with the National Labor Relations Board a complaint. And the best case scenario there is, months and months and months, and he gets reinstated. But there's no criminal consequences for Amazon to do these kind of things. I was also told that Amazon had safety officials guarding outside the warehouse to not let media in the days of the election. I was up there a week before the election. I wasn't there the days of the election, but I wonder why they wouldn't want media there. So there really is no labor protections where a company like Amazon would think twice to just blatantly break the law, because it's not like Jeff Bezos or anyone's going to jail for these kind of things. At the most, maybe they'll have to pay some fines. That's why the PRO Act was so important, which we got lip service from the Democratic Party, but no actual effort to pass it. So until there are actual labor laws that actually have teeth, I think we're going to see more of this. The union, Christian Amazon Labor Union, I think they're going to have to, be resilient and take lessons learned from this loss. And how do we combat with this army of union busting consultants when it's not our warehouse? Because remember, Christian and the Amazon Labor Union, they were organizing in their own warehouse. So they knew the workers there. They had like a home field advantage where this was a separate warehouse. So they could go up there. I think Christian and organizers went up there a few times, but you're not there full time to organize. So
it has to come from within there. Like you have to get enough of the people there on board that it becomes their like project. That's how you start changing the minds, when it's coming from within.
Yeah.
And it takes a while.
I'd also say, I mean, we've all spoke quite often about independent media. We need more coverage of these union races before they happen. I mean, I I drove up there. I covered a rally there, interviewed the workers. But, a lot of these workers are, I wouldn't say like very, very young, but a lot of them are on Twitter, TikTok. One of the things that was very successful about Christian and the Staten Island workers campaign is they use digital media really well. And they TikTok videos and videos inside the warehouse were getting out there showing union busting and bad things happening. And that gets around, and then workers who might not know about the union or might be on the fence about the union, they're seeing this on the platforms they're on. Whereas with this, I mean, I don't know of any other outlet that was covering the fact that Albany had an election coming up, had any workers on. Without that kind of exposure, you're not going to get enough traction for the workers that might be on the fence in the warehouse to see stuff on digital media.
Well, it would also be nice if we had an executive branch that gave a crap about labor.
Yes.
And maybe, and this is crazy, use their platform to do something about it. I'm just throwing that out there. I know it's crazy talk. Like, what if we had an executive branch that actually, and a Department of Labor that actually did something? Just throwing that out.
I agree. I mean, I show a chart on my show all the time. I mean, you look at the income inequality chart, that chart with all the money on the red line going to the top. It goes hand in hand with the decline in union membership in this country. It's not a coincidence. That is really, there's a lot of reasons why we live, kind of in an economic gilded age, but that ranks high up there. And essentially, I mean, even the PRO Act would only go so far. We can't even get Biden, while clearly this inflation, I would say over half of it is due to companies just price gouging. Yeah. I mean, he could have pulled subsidies from the fossil fuel industry. That's $15 billion a year. They could have pushed to make stock buybacks illegal if you are making a certain amount of profit margin. There's a lot of things they can do. Of course, he could have taken executive action. It might not be the PRO Act, but some executive action to make it easier to organize this and that. You don't see Joe Biden or any of his surrogates out at these warehouses. I got to give her credit. I don't know if she meant, maybe it was just a photo op, but Kirsten Gillibrand was at the rally I was at. Obviously, she doesn't have a strong track record of being a friend of the workers, but at least she was there. So yeah, we don't have an executive office. And you want to know something? Forget like whether there would principally be for labor, but it would actually help them win elections, because you're seeing in polls support for unions rising in this country to really, really high levels. So it would help if Biden, the Democratic Party, responded to these kind of things. And by the way, we haven't even gotten to Staten Island, where they won their union election. Amazon still hasn't recognized it. So they're not even close to collectively bargaining, because they won't.
Nobody's ever accused the Democratic Party of being politically savvy, right? Like they're the whole thing.
Well, no.
Brought up in the chat with this letter from the Progressive Caucus and the timing of that. Like, if there's a way for them to do worse, that's the strategy. Well,
this is not an issue of savvy. This is an issue of corruption. They're not going to push these things because at the same time, the very corporations that do not want a labor movement, do not want a rise in unions, are the ones that they're begging for money from. So, I mean, that's the deal.
When would they be able to try to form a union again? I don't know if it's like if there's like a specific protocol as far as timing or anything like that, but if they wanted to try again, when would that happen?
Well, I should say, sorry if I did not say this, Amazon Labor Union is contesting the election, which happened also, if you remember, Bessemer, Alabama. They had contested the results, saying that Amazon broke the law. The National Labor Relations Board granted them a second election, which they lost. So they technically here could get a second election if National Labor Relations Board finds that Amazon did violate labor laws. So that, could happen. With Bessemer, I think it happened within a few months that the National Labor Relations Board approved it again. And if they are granted a second election, I mean, 200 votes is a lot, but it can't, with enough runway, they might be able to win a second go around. Without that, it's again, you have to organize more. I don't technically know the rules. If the first go around, you have to show the National Labor Relations Board at least 30% of the warehouse is interested in holding a union election. So there might be a higher threshold. I could check that, but I think to get it again, it would be the same thing. You have to go back and show 30% interest. I should say only 66% of the warehouse workers voted in this election. So there's, over 30% did not vote. That could be, some of them might be seasonal workers, part-time workers, but there's a good chunk of people that didn't vote. So obviously if they have a do-over, the organizers will be targeting people who didn't vote.
I listened the other day when you spoke with Mr. Grumbine regarding this problem with the ability to get the message out there about these things that are really important. Just the idea that $1.1 trillion in stock buybacks by these mega corporations, which would be the biggest in history since it was implemented under Reagan in '82. It shouldn't even be legal, but I think it directly relates to the issue with collective bargaining, with the attempts of unionization at any of these companies. Because if these workers are able to unionize, it hurts the bottom line of these corporate investors. That's what this is all about. This is a give and take. And as far as, the oligarchic approach to economics in this country goes, you can never have enough. There's always more. And there's always more people that can get sick and die for the purpose of profiting more. And that is the break within the system. The problem is that the message is just not getting out there. And the person that we will not mention, who's actually down here in Miami this evening, we couldn't went and seen him do his live stand-up show. Because
I am very excited, though. Michael Rappaport's going to be down here next month. I'm very excited
Go
about
see
that.
Mikey.
I love him.
That'll be fun.
Okay.
He's great.
And aside from, the obvious attempts of just, so many people doing the same thing, which is just clickbaiting and, not really, like you said, it's like the whole concept of the online left. You don't actually get off the computer. You don't actually get off of Twitter. You're not actually out there making this impact. Have you had responses from anybody? Has anybody actually responded to you saying, well, I'd really like to cover this, but, I can't actually do it. So what's that been like, trying to get other people to really pay attention to the importance of these types of stories, which if you're looking to build a movement to combat corporate interests on Capitol Hill, this is how it's done.
Nope. Other than Breaking Points, which fortunately I have a partnership with. So they featured some of my reporting up at the warehouse and interviews with some of the workers. But other than them, no. I mean, honestly, at this point, I got to be honest. I mean, I've talked to you, Peter, about this before, but I mean, I'm lucky if people retweet some of these interviews I do or rallies I cover. It's remarkable. And, you know, I really think at the end of the day, the left is so fractured because a lot of the left lives online, and most of the high profile left hosts, they don't seem to want to cover the only place where there is some momentum in left politics. I mean, that's the crazy part.
Because
if you look at it,
we're concerned with the political left. What we're talking about is the actual left,
the economic
left. And so when you look at that group, there's plenty of Republicans in that group. When you go to, you know this, if you're at a labor rally, there's people that voted for Bernie, there's people that voted for Trump. And so when we say the left, we're talking about the media left and our partisan left, not the actual left. Because labor in general is the actual left. And it's very frustrating that people that claim to be the left don't cover the actual left because they're caught up in whatever stupid crap they're caught up in.
And I will also bring up, and I will not say who it is, and I will not say who the representative is, but somebody who's very high up in DC who I was able to speak with basically said, the left is completely fractured. There are too many of these. There's too much individualism on the left, which is so ironic because, as Jen always likes to point out, the idea of economic leftism is collectivism, being able to have universal health care, living wage.
Socialism is the left.
Yes. Well, I see it as a hybrid system. You can't have you can't have capitalism without socialism.
No, but left is
and vice
collectivism.
Versa. Correct. Well,
that's
that's what I'm saying. And so the idea that you're not even able amongst even those people that are on the left on Capitol Hill, if you even want to call it that, are able to get together and form a cohesive message, which again, I think is a perfect transition to what transpired in the last, well, what would be 48 hours, what initially looked like an actual stand being taken principally by the left on Capitol Hill. In 24 hours, literally did an about face in the worst possible way, because it already looks like, without question, the Democrats are going to lose the House. And now they very likely are going to lose the Senate as well. And this is perfectly setting things up for the corporate establishment to blame the Democratic left for losing the midterms to the GOP. It's like this could not have worked out more perfectly for Pelosi and company.
They love
in
that.
terms of being able to blame the squad and Bernie and everyone for effing this up. But you know what? It sucks that it's that way, but maybe the bottom has to fall out, because whether you like it or not, people will respect those that at least stand on principle. They couldn't stand on principle for one effing day. They did an about face so effing fast, it proves everybody right about how feckless the left is.
Jordan, did you read the original letter?
Yeah.
Okay. So the fact that was worthy of backtracking, I still can't figure out what in it was so incendiary and controversial. The premise, for people who don't know, is that the Congressional Progressive Caucus sent a letter to Joe Biden asking that because we're giving a substantial sum of money to Ukraine, that he should pursue all these diplomatic options first. They dared to suggest that. And then they backtracked from something that to me isn't even controversial. So I don't understand any of this. What's your take?
Well, first, I think we should point out this trend of them sending letters to Biden.
Strongly worded letters.
So like, you know, whatever you think about him, he's the president. You know, they have to treat him with whatever the reverence the president gets. But it's not like Pramila Jayapal can't tell her staffer, hey, call CNN. I want to go on and get this message out. Right. So like the fact that they keep sending letters, asking kindly, can you, please go, that in itself is laughable and pathetic. But yeah, I mean, listen, we have to go back to the end of last year. Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, to their credit, they held fast on the bipartisan infrastructure deal for several months. So did the squad, and they were, the Jimmy Dore. Oh, excuse me. The so-called leftists weren't giving them credit for it, but I was, because they were actually using their power. Then Terry McAuliffe, if you remember, when he lost the Virginia governor's race, somehow the narrative was blaming like the progressives for that because they didn't pass the bipartisan infrastructure deal, because somehow not having that shit sandwich was why McAuliffe lost. With that, rising pressure on them and heat on them, she folded like a cheap tent. She said, what did she say? I'm going to believe the president's word that he will deliver Manchin's vote on Build Back Better, which at the time was supposed to be closer to the $3 trillion. And they voted for the bipartisan infrastructure deal without the Build Back Better with it. So we already have this pattern of when the media and the Democratic leadership starts encircling them, she folds. But what was so egregious about this is she was like, the letter actually said, yeah, we're for, send more weapons. We're down with that. We're just asking for United States to just approach Russia to maybe try and to fold like that. Because again, it's psychological warfare, and actual leaders with steel like a Shama Sawant would not buckle. But the Democratic Party and the leadership, they were probably circling Jayapal in those 24 hours like sharks. You're gonna cost us the midterms. You're gonna give the House and the Senate to the Republicans, even though normal people.
No, actually, it's the opposite. By sending the letter, you might actually get people to vote for the Democrats. It's so clear that the reason they sent the letter is because they know what the internal polling is saying. People don't want this BS anymore. They don't want.
But what's the worst? Wars. The worst part of it all to me is that she threw her staff under the bus.
Oh God, that was so.
That disgusts me.
First of all, I mean, obviously we know she was lying, but let's for argument's sake say you take her at face value that this wasn't vetted, then she should resign anyway, because you're the head of the Progressive Caucus, and 30 people signed this, and you didn't know about it. I mean, that's incompetence anyway. But at the heart of it, to me, listen, I'm not like these, again, leftists who seem to have an allergy to saying anything negative about Russia or Putin and somehow like to pretend that Ukraine invaded itself. I think this is a nuanced thing. I don't understand these people who are like, you're either team Russia or team Ukraine. No, I mean, Putin and Russia have legitimate concerns. I mean, NATO is on their doorstep. There were promises made. To me, that doesn't give them the green light to go invade Ukraine and kill all these innocent people. But with that said, at a certain point, I do feel for the people of Ukraine. I'm totally for as much humanitarian aid as we can give, and coordinating intelligence. But if you're just going to continue to grease the skids of the military-industrial complex, continue sending more weapons without any diplomacy to go along with that, then this is going to be a boondoggle that goes on for years. And at a certain point, it's clear this is not to defend Ukraine as much as it is to have a coup in Russia and remove Putin. I'd love to see Putin removed. I mean, he is a brutal dictator. I think he's committed war crimes. These so-called leftists who, push out propaganda that, Ukraine bombed its own mall. Russia isn't targeting innocent civilians. That's bullshit. They are. But at a certain point, I mean, if the United States is not even going to pretend to kind of initiate diplomacy, then I got a problem when the people of Flint are still begging for clean water after 8.5 years. I got a problem when, if you travel around as much as I have, you guys have traveled a little. Some of these roads are not drivable around the country. I have a problem when Jackson's water is still fucked up. I have a problem when, I just went on a reporting tour a few months ago. People are literally scavenging in their couches to find change to fill up their gas. But at the same time, we're sending billions of dollars every week to Ukraine. Again, I'm not on principle, I'm not against supporting them, but you can't have a blank check to any country if you're not going to try and end the war.
That's always my thing. And this is something that parents will relate to. All right. When someone is on your payroll, you get a say so. That's how it works. If you control the checkbook, you get a say so. So the fact that our Congress is asking very nicely, dear Mr. President, would you please maybe consider diplomatic options before we just give money into the war complex? And that somehow required a retraction is one of the most pathetic things. They should all be ashamed of themselves. Like, that's just ridiculous. They're just so cowardly.
And how easy do you want to make it? I mean, listen, if you're getting outflanked by Thomas Massey, you really need to reconsider your strategy because it's not working. And why they're so afraid. I understand that once they get in and they believe that they can really make a difference, they also get very caught up in the life. It's obvious some of them in particular really did. You have to ask yourself, why are you there? Like, what's the point? If you're not going to stand up for something, if
you're just there to protect your seat, what are you doing that for?
And there are several of them that are safe. I mean, AOC in particular, her seat is about as safe as it gets. So why do you not make a stand?
I don't understand any of it.
I think that, again, it's not popular on the internet to be nuanced. I never really got into the whole fraud squad thing because I'm not 12. But I do think that AOC, there seems to be a pattern, really, of magazine covers and interviews with, CNN and MSNBC. She just did an interview with Pod Save America, which are a bunch of Obama bros. And I'm not on principle against. It's the same issue I have. I don't have an issue if you go on Tucker Carlson as a leftist. I have an issue if you go on Tucker Carlson as a leftist and you go like this. Yes, Tucker. Yes, Tucker. You're great, Tucker. And don't actually challenge any of his lies and white supremacy. There's a way to do it in a way that, is tactful. I don't have a problem with AOC going on more corporate neoliberal media. But if you're not going to actually, push the actual progressive message, call out their bullshit at all, then it's useless. And it's the same thing. You were in Cleveland the second go around. They didn't endorse Nina Turner because they were threatened by the Democratic establishment, the squad, that if you endorse Nina Turner, we're coming after you with all the super PACs and everything for your primaries. I know that affected Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, and others. I don't think Nina would have won anyway. But at the end of the day, these are people who in large part started as activists and were pretty, in the case of Cori Bush and some others, were pretty badass, pretty like guerrilla activists that have been neutered. It doesn't mean they're terrible people. What it does mean is it's not enough for all of us to just share the same policy values. If we don't actually share the same willingness to fight for it, if you don't share, like Shama Sawant said something to me a while ago that really made a lot of sense. If you are not hated, then you're not doing it right.
Correct.
If you are not hated in DC, or if you're not hated in your local, whatever, in her case, Seattle, by the establishment and the media, then you're not doing it right. And it takes a certain kind of person to have that kind of thick skin. And I think that, unfortunately, these progressives, they might genuinely care for Medicare for all. They might genuinely care for some of the policies we care for. But I don't think they realize, in their mind, I think that they are not going aggressively hard at the Democratic establishment, at Biden, because they see the rising threat of fascism in America, and they feel we need to focus on the Republicans right now. I think there is a rising threat of fascism. The only problem is part of why there's a rising threat of fascism is because there's no opposition.
Yeah, right. It's neoliberalism.
Well, you cannot fight the right from the center. It doesn't work. And they keep doing it. And in Florida, they are going to fail gloriously. It's going to be a glorious loss.
Let me tell you something. I'm right now, DeSantis is probably going to win by double digits. That's like what? No, I didn't do anything.
Oh my!
What did I say? Didn't we bet on that a while ago? What did I say?
I say over 10. He says under
7
10.
to 10. That's what
I call 12. He says under 10. I think it's going to be huge.
The day of the debate, the RR, is it RPI? Is that whatever? The average of polls had DeSantis at a plus 10. And today, the latest poll says that DeSantis lead is widening.
Here's what I know. We canvass all the time. We are, and not only do we canvass, and I want people to understand this, I don't need polls. We're out on the street in the bluest county in the state of Florida is where we canvass. We canvass neighborhoods. We canvass businesses. We go to events. We talk to people. We talk to so many people. I have not yet met a Charlie Crist supporter other than someone voting for him because they don't like DeSantis. We meet DeSantis supporters all the time. I haven't seen a single Charlie Crist yard sign, not one, in
a blue area, yeah.
In the bluest county in the state, I have not seen one Charlie Crist lawn sign. Like you see the big signs, but not one lawn sign. And DeSantis ones all over the place. Because Charlie Crist doesn't have fans or supporters. He has people that are voting against DeSantis. He doesn't have supporters. DeSantis actually has supporters. And there are a lot of people that won't say it out loud. And I've met Democrats at Dem Club meetings, lifelong Dems, that support DeSantis over Crist. It's going to be brutal.
And
based on what? I know Crist is terrible, but why do they support DeSantis?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is when it just comes to natural instincts, people gravitate to leaders that want to kick ass and take names. They ask questions later about whether or not the policy is actually good for them. But there's a lot of people in the state who feel like this governor is standing up for them. That's what they think.
And on civil liberties, he is. And again, not a fan, but Charlie Crist, I don't like chameleons. At least with DeSantis, you know where he stands. And by the way, he's the reason that FP&L didn't screw us on net metering. He's the one who vetoed that bill. He's the one who's been helping us with Everglades restoration.
And that bill should have never gotten to DeSantis' desk because, again, the Democrats can't get their act together. As far as I'm concerned, it's deliberate sabotage. There were 3 GOP state senators who voted no on the net metering bill, but there just happened to be 3 state Democratic senators that managed to vote yes. And somehow that got to DeSantis' desk. He vetoed it, which gave him another political win that he didn't need. And that was all the Democrats because they can't get their own effing party.
I'll tell you what, Charlie Crist wouldn't stand up to Florida Power and Light. He wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I can't challenge you, obviously, on Florida politics. I don't know enough, but
what I do, Republican governor, and he wasn't that great.
No, what I do know is if you had an economic populist, let's say a Fetterman without the stroke.
Yeah,
I think an economic populist could actually be competitive with DeSantis, and I'll tell you why. First of all, if you looked at that debate, he's super awkward when he's not around friendly media. He's not ready for prime time. He looks super awkward. He's very bizarre, and he's weird. Secondly, Florida property insurance is a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
Florida's inflation is above the national average. There is economic issues in Florida, and DeSantis is, kissing ass of corporations when he's not, challenging Disney. What is he giving $600 million in tax cuts? So I think an economic populist with a message of if I'm governor, here's what we're going to do to take on these corporate price gougers here in Florida. When I'm governor, healthcare is one of the fastest growing inflation metrics. We're going to push for single payer healthcare in Florida. I mean, I could go down the list. DeSantis
is a big one too. Here,
yeah,
is a big one.
Yeah, DeSantis might win, but it would be a lot closer. But Crist is basically his messages are saving democracy, which that's nice, but
all he's got is the Roe v. Wade and the increase in female voters.
The messaging is not strong. The ground game is
pitiful.
Basically non-existent. It's just been, but again, this stems from the fact that the Democratic Party in this state, as it is in a lot of other places, is just completely feckless. And it starts at the top with Wasserman Schultz. She is the reason why you have Manny Diaz as the state chair. She is the reason why, again, all the money gets raised but never goes into the proper places. The way that Val Demings has gotten all of the money, which of course is the wrong race because the Senate race never is the top race. It's always the governor's race. So whichever way the governor's race is going to go, it doesn't matter how bad Rubio is. Rubio, like he will always do, just hide in the corner and try not to be seen. So that way DeSantis can carry the day. And over and over and over again, you see Val Demings' ads all over the TV. And yet you have these down ballot races. One in particular that's not that far from here, this gentleman named Gabriel Gonzalez, who's running in Miami, and he has a real chance to win that seat and flip it. And the Democratic Party is doing absolutely nothing to help him. Zero to help this kid.
They have no strategy, but I don't think they want to win. The people at the top don't want to win. If you want to win against Republicans, you don't bring in Republicans. You bring in left populists. That's the whole point. They're putting up people like Michael Bloomberg bought our state party.
I mean, you have to really, and Bloomberg is the one who has the relationship with Wasserman Schultz. But Jordan, you really have to ask yourself, how much of this is deliberate? Like, how much of this is deliberate self-sabotage? Because in reality, they're two sides of the same coin. And the Democrats believe in their mind, since they're going to lose anyway, let's lose spectacularly. And then we'll be able to fundraise off of this, saying that fascism really is here and you got to vote for us. You got to give us money. Because the presidential election's coming up in 24 and you got to blah, 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 blah. I mean, to me, it's the same story over and over again. And yet we always seem to stay on the same track without a change.
On the national level, I think that is what's going on. But the truth is, I got to be honest with you, and this perspective comes from traveling and covering a lot of this. They're not wrong. I think they're crowing about fascism. I think they're more doing that for political reasons, but there certainly is an authoritarian fascist rise in this country. You have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene going around saying the killings have begun. Democrats are coming to kill you. You have Trump putting out like fatwas on Mitch McConnell with, all cap death wishes. Political violence is on the rise. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. I don't think that's really a political message to win. I think the Democrats, I think you're right, would be using that, if they lose, when they lose the House, possibly the Senate, vote like your lives are on the line in 2024, because if Trump gets back in there or DeSantis gets back in there, democracy will be gone, which I think they would lose running on that because, they need to actually run what are you for? Right. But the truth is, I avoided when Trump was president, using the F word, Hitler comparisons, any of that stuff. But just in the last year or two, I really see the country is really a powder keg. I think political violence. I think Trump's going to be prosecuted over these classified documents. I think it's going to usher in a real string of political violence. I think you have politicians no longer winking and nodding at suggestions of violence, but just saying it. So I do think we're in really dangerous territory. And at the same time, people are really economically fucked. I mean, nobody believes that this is a historic economic recovery. I don't even think the CNN anchors who say it, or, low unemployment. Nobody actually believes that. If you go out and just talk to people like I have, I mean, people were hurting before this round of inflation.
Don't you think that just enrages independent-minded people even more when they come out and say, oh, yeah, everything's fine?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, you can't blame people who are really hurting economically, might have fears about being displaced, not having enough money for rent, falling behind on the mortgage, having to make tough choices in terms of groceries versus medicine. If, the sanctity of democracy is not the first thing on their mind, to have that comfort, that's a luxury for that to be your top concern. That's more if you're a suburban person who's doing fine, you might have the luxury of worrying about democracy and fascism. But for most people, you're worried about bread and, table issues. And the truth is, whether they actually mean it or not, the Democratic Party could have done some very simple things to be winning right now. I'll give you one. Biden, using the bully pulpit of the presidency, could have went on a fucking crusade against Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
Over the child tax credit. The child tax credit, it's not my preferred policy. I would be more for like a UBI or something like that. But the child tax credit, once that was put in, Biden's approval rating went way up. Democratic Party's approval rating went back up because, shocker, when you give people money to help them, particularly working class people, poor people, they tend to want more of that policy. But when Manchin blocked extending it, Biden just went out like a candle in the wind. He didn't fight him on it. He didn't pressure him. He didn't shame him. I think if he did all those things, there was a shot that would have been extended. There was a shot that would have been extended for another year. And if that was extended for another year, I promise you the polls in terms of who do you trust on the economy would look a little different. And that's just one thing he could have done. There's a lot of other things he could have done. I already talked about. We give $15 billion a year to these fossil fuckers in free money. JFK, when the steel companies were price fixing, he threatened them publicly and said, "Oh, I'm pulling these submarine contracts from U.S. Steel and others. I'm going to give the contracts to companies that aren't price fixing." They folded in days and lowered their prices. So, devil's advocate might say, "Oh, Jordan, these fossil fuel companies, they don't care. They wouldn't have done it." I don't know. If you're dangling, they're looking at the long game too. If they're gonna lose $15 billion a year as an industry, yeah, they might lower prices by 75 cents to $1. That would be a big political winner. He's not going to do that. I'll tell you why. We live in the United Corporations of America. Wall Street is the biggest investor of the fossil fuel industry, and Wall Street is the biggest donor to the Democratic Party.
And that is the perfect transition, because everyone is looking in all these different directions as to what the root causes of all of these problems that exist on Capitol Hill, why Biden has essentially been a borderline failure of a president. It's because our government is captured by corporate special interests. This isn't complicated. No. It's just painfully obvious that when you find your scapegoat, whether it is a mansion or a cinema, there will always be one, so long as it does not affect the bottom line of corporate special interests at the behest of the needs of workers.
However, can we just please promote this, because it's very apropos. So guys, in that vein, as you all know, we are coming out early with our endorsement for 2024. We vote for Manchin and the Parliamentarian. That's the ticket we support in 24, because who's more powerful? If Joe Manchin is more powerful than the president, because the president can't get anything past him, that's who we should vote for, people. So just saying, think about it.
Can you mail me some of those? I want to put it up there.
Do you like it? I'll send you one.
Yeah.
I'll send you one. This is what happens when I'm alone at night in my little room playing with Canva.
And
what? I hope on medicine too.
Well, I think right now it's just, again, it's not looking good. And even when, and this is, again, one of the bigger reasons why I can't stand Biden, is because he acts like he's doing something good, and then you find out after the fact it was as milquetoast as it could possibly be, whether it was on the very tepid, limited amount of student loan debt cancellation that he did, or it was regarding restoring economic rights, if you want to call it that, to those who are incarcerated via usage of cannabis. That type of thing, to me, when you read the fine print, you realize, much like when the progressives put forward a letter suggesting doing something and then pulling it back the very next day, it's even worse when you try to give somebody a little something and then it turns out you didn't really give them anything at all. You're just insulting them. And I think enough people have been insulted by this government. I still think that's Trump's biggest appeal. No matter how bad he is, people hate DC even more. And that's why I think for millions of people, they just see Trump as he always was back in 2015, 2016, a Molotov cocktail to this system that people are just done with at this point. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think Trump, if he ran again, possibly would lose again, even if it was Biden. I think it would be really close. But, you never know. I don't really see this inflation really changing that much in a year and a half, because the main thing that's driving it is these corporations. It's not, the supply chain is not as bad as it was 2 years ago. And we've already talked about and established Biden's not going to do anything about these corporations price gouging. I think it would be a really sad state of affairs for this country, worse position than we're already in, if it was a rematch between these two senile assholes. But I things are not good right now in terms of where the country's going. And I think that it's either neoliberalism or whatever the hell the new MAGA, I think fascism. And I don't want either of those things because the neoliberalism is allowing the fascism. And meanwhile, for the progressive movement, I think we've taken our eyes off the ball. We are where we are with the elected progressives. They've shown what they are and are not willing to do. And the action right now is among the workers, the union drives, the strikes, 10-inch unions are popping up. But that stuff is happening out there with not enough attention and not enough lifting of those efforts by the progressive independent media. So I'm going to keep covering those things because that's where the action is and that's where the victories are happening.
And, you know, Colanello, who's a very good supporter of the show, mentioned earlier, is this about bad timing? No, actually, as I'm sure you would agree, the best time to try to do something bold is right around election time, because then you really got them caught in a rock and a hard place, not just because they should have definitely made a stand regarding Ukraine, but this is really the time when the railroad workers should be striking. They should be striking right at this moment, when they know that the Democrats are kind of backed into a corner. Now, they may just say, the hell with it anyway, because all the numbers show that they're going to at least lose the House, which means you're having divided government for the next 2 years. And Biden will officially now become a lame duck president. So that may be true. But
that's his dream.
But to not have to do anything?
Oh, that's the dream job for all of those Democrats, is to be lame duck Democrats. They love
and just
that.
Blame the Republicans that we can't get anything done. But with that said, if there is an opportunity for labor, it's at a moment like this right now. So when labor workers, especially the railroad workers, are concerned about, well, you know, maybe we'll do something after the election. What's the point? Do it right now when you have leverage. That, to me, would make the most sense.
Shout out to UPS and FedEx workers. You guys all need to be going on strike. Oh, my God.
Well, you know how that works. Biden met with the railroad union bosses, gave them some empty promises that if we could hold this off till after the midterms, I'll do X for you. And X never seems to happen, or it happens, but it's really Y and Z and not what was promised. So, yeah, I think there's a possibility, by the way, of a railroad strike in the next few months. Another one of the big railroad unions voted against the tentative agreement today. So,
good.
Yeah.
As they should.
Yeah, we had Max Alvarez on, and who was the woman? I forget who she was.
Name is slipping me right
to
now.
Talk about this, and people don't realize it's more than one union. There's multiple unions when we say.
Oh yeah, there's 12 right. Of them. Yeah.
So a couple of them might be on board with whatever the administration is proposing, but that does not negate the possibility of a strike from the other one, and people don't realize that.
And I also think it brings the conversation full circle, because the railroad workers, in many ways, is emblematic of the failures of labor in this country over the past several decades. Since the height of what you would consider railroad workers in this country, they've lost about 80% of their staff. And we've only grown all the more exponentially.
They're working ridiculous conditions. It's not a money thing also. I mean, I'm sure there is a money factor, but the biggest issue with the railroad workers is conditions. The hours, the conditions, like that stuff. So people don't realize, they might look at that like, well, they get paid okay. I'm like, that's not the point. Just because somebody gets paid okay doesn't mean it's okay to treat them like crap. You know, that those things are not mutually exclusive.
Last question before you go. If there was to be, I mean, right now, again, we are staring down a Trump or DeSantis presidency in 24. But if there was somebody who did run as a progressive populist, whatever you want to call it.
Who?
Well, not even so much who, but how much do you think that candidate would benefit if they basically just ran an economic populist message specifically on labor? To me, less is more. Andrew Yang carved a niche for himself just basically by running on UBI. And he did become a pretty well-known commodity. Now, you can argue he didn't make the best decisions, obviously, but he did become pretty well-known for that. And if somebody were to run almost like saying, we're going to create the biggest labor movement this country has seen in multiple generations, do you think that could potentially have an impact if somebody does step up to the plate, after the midterms?
If a candidate steps up to the plate?
Yeah.
I think if a candidate steps up to the race and makes labor, I mean, basically point A, B, and C, is at the picket lines with the John Deere workers or whomever is out there, is at the union drives. I absolutely think that could tap into both Democrats and Republican voters, because like we've said, it goes both ways among workers. Some of them voted for Trump. Some of them voted for Biden. A lot of them didn't vote. I think whoever runs, hopefully there's a progressive challenger, whether it's to Biden or Harris. I think if they make labor, and forget labor for a second, just the working workers revolting now, and attach themselves to that and actually say, I think specifically, if somebody runs and says, when I am elected, here are the 20 executive actions I'm going to take. And here is my plan for when they are challenged in court. And here is the basis on why I think we could win on X, Y, and Z. Specifics. And say, I'm not going to bother with the delusion of working with this Congress, because Congress hasn't worked for 30 years in this country. Right. I think that could be very popular, because at this point, people want someone to actually deliver on the bold promises they're making, not the milquetoast promises, the bold promises. And if you could have, in most cases, I wouldn't suggest like a 20-point plan, but if you can make it very simple, and here's how we're going to get it done, and on day one, here's what I'm going to do. I mean, they would be castigated as, not working through the system and, going around Congress. Good. I think that would be very popular, actually. Who would it be? I don't know. Right now, the bench is kind of thin on the progressive left, but if somebody runs that way, I think it could be very popular.
I think that's the biggest problem, is that they really don't have anybody, because the Democrats don't truly support labor anymore. So it isn't that's not what they're about. They're clearly not about that. So who of them would actually support labor?
And that really is the conundrum we're stuck with at this point.
We don't have a labor
party. We really have to talk about it at a later date. But the GOP has really done an amazing job of bringing in these disaffected workers, even though they do nothing for them. They pay them the type of lip service that convinces them, well, they're actually looking out for my interests. It is very interesting how you can see a lot of these supporters going against that are in the Republican Party now and going against Mitch McConnell. Like, there is sort of this different attitude that exists. But to me, I just feel like workers in this country are lost. They don't know who is on their side. They don't know who they could ever trust that is going to support them. And so they're just desperate. And I definitely agree that we're not in a good situation, but somebody who would step up and basically run an unabashed pro-labor, anti-corporate campaign for president, it could be a no-name person, and they would probably catch some fire. And
I think they need to use the C word too. I think they need to use the C word. One of Bernie's biggest mistakes was when Zephyr Teachout wrote an op-ed calling Joe Biden corrupt.
Yep.
He shut that down and made them recant it. We need somebody to call out the Democratic Party and call it corrupt. Call this system corrupt. Yeah. Point out their donors. Both ways, Republicans and Democrats. You'll be excoriated by the media. You'll be excoriated by the Democratic establishment, but you might catch fire, like Peter said, with actual voters. So
it's possible. It's possible. Yep. I think I'd see a unicorn first, then a progressive. That's
at this point, we're hoping for a unicorn. Jordan, it's always a pleasure. Let people know what you're working on, how they can find you, get involved. Obviously, if you guys are not currently subscribed to Status Coup, you definitely should be, because if we are ever going to have any semblance of journalism in this country, it's going to come from channels like Status Coup. So, Jordan, the floor is yours. Thank you, as always.
Thank you. Status Coup on YouTube, COUP. You might have to search for us because YouTube doesn't make it easy. Click the bell for notifications, click all notifications. And if you appreciate living, breathing, on the ground reporting, we actually leave the studio and cover things in the trenches. Support us, statuscoup.com/join. We're actually doing our monthly members call with Status Coup members tomorrow. It's through Zoom. So if you sign up before tomorrow night, you'll get an email with the link. Take your questions, comments, concerns. It's always a good time. We usually go for an hour or two tomorrow night.
Do you get a good response to that?
Yeah, sometimes we have like 60, 70 people show
That's
up.
pretty good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
tried. It just turns out to be a staff meeting between us.
I mean, sometimes it's 30, it's 20 to 30, but we've had like 70, 80.
That's good.
Look, for
some.
a channel of ours that has just under 8,000 subscribers,
We're
and
set.
we can get, we're pretty good at times to get, 40, 50, even 60 YouTube live streamers at one time. The fact that you have over 100,000 and you're getting, 400, people, there should be 4,000 people watching your live stream when it's going on.
Yeah.
So if anyone thinks that we're not suppressed, that they don't deliberately F with the algorithm to make sure that anything related to anti-corporate narrative, pro-worker narrative isn't suppressed message, like you said, you can't even put Amazon in the description because you know it's going to get flagged.
I literally have stopped putting Amazon in the headline, Flint in the headline, Assange in the headline, because the data shows when we put those in the headline, tanks.
Yeah.
So
I knew that for sure. I knew that about Amazon and Assange. I knew that for sure that we get, it hurts the algorithm.
Well, keep fighting the good fight. We have your back all the way. Hope all goes well with the book. We'll definitely try to get ours going. We've been working on it, but yeah, I know. We'll figure it out. Jordan Chariton, Status Quo. Appreciate you, brother. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jordan.
thanks. Bye-bye.
See you.
There's craziness going on in the chat too, but thank you, Double K.
Double K, much appreciated, brother. It really means a lot. Anyone who contributes to our show is obviously very, very appreciated. And of course, if you haven't already become a patron of our wonderful show, because it is a wonderful show, it's a really tremendous show, incredible show. So go to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can subscribe and become a paying member of our channel, which will help us get lots of more goodies for other people, like non-corporate candidates running for office, nonprofits here in South Florida that are definitely supporting the good causes that most of you support. We're
like a mutual fund for community service. That's where the money goes.
And once in a great while, Jen and I might go out to have a bite to eat.
Every once in a while.
That's about it.
Every once in a while.
But if you want,
supporting small business though, always supporting small business.
But if you are, yes, 1,000%. We're not going to Taco Bell or Subway. That's not happening. I'm just saying we're definitely going to the small business. With that said, if you are feeling a little bit extra generous, it would behoove you to go to the $10 limit and get the Mansion Parliamentarian bumper sticker and
you need to give me Jordan's address.
The new sticker.
Look at my girl.
Which is so really cute.
So I mean, guys, all the money that comes into us for a show goes towards helping community service and non-corporate candidates.
And if you are feeling extra generous, $25 a month will get you the Generational Change baseball jersey T-shirt.
They're really nice, actually.
Silky soft.
Well, we definitely go with the tribal and the soft shirts. I've learned enough from campaigning for enough. I have enough campaign shirts. I could like wallpaper a room, and I know what's good. The thick ones, no bueno. Not in Florida. So
we really appreciate your support. But of course, if you are not so inclined to go to Patreon, you really don't want to have obviously your credit card on file. You can do one better and go over to Cash App. See, if you go over to Cash App, you can just drop a few bucks in right now. So with that said, if you do go to Cash App, it's $GenChange, very easy. Any amount of money will obviously be very appreciated.
yeah.
And the last thing we have to mention, which is always the most important one of all, is our small business neighbors. $50 a month will get you a plug every single show of your small business. We will never have it cross over in terms of the specific profession. So everything will be unique unto itself.
And this is our insurance agency.
So if you are looking for a good quote, Apex Insurance Agency in Delray Beach, small business, home, auto, and even life insurance. They will take good care of you, and you won't have to go through the big box stores to pay those extra premiums. You might find yourself getting a really good quote on health home, auto, or life.
We don't prop up health.
We don't prop up, because it shouldn't exist.
Tell them Jen and Pete sent you.
Yes, please do, and you'll get I'm sure they'll give you a nice discount. I thought it was a kick a rib, and I didn't even think about that.
But you guys, if you have a small business, if you want us to promote, we're very happy to do so. And I'm always looking for the taco truck. If you have a taco truck, we will even do our live stream from your location. I'm just saying.
Jen, if you were in office, would you have time to do these podcasts? Good friend Mario wants to know.
You know, I don't know that answer to that. I don't know the answer to that, but I will definitely would have a lot of time being live and communicating and putting information out so people know what's going on. Whether or not it would be these live streams and I would have time to really interview people, I don't know that.
Barbara, why do you have to be such a Debbie Downer?
Yeah, don't be poopy.
Like, really?
Don't be poopy. Why are you being poopy?
We're good people.
We're good people. We're just trying to get the filth out. That's all we're trying to do. So we could have our reading.
Yes. So we are doing a new segment, I guess you would say.
It's a new segment, and we're doing it like a Bible reading, but it's a constitutional reading. So we're going to be reading excerpts because I figure if you guys tune in, by the end of a certain amount of time, you will have read the Constitution. I actually think that everybody should do that. I've read it a few times. There's parts of it that aren't exactly a page turner, I'll give you that. And some of it is a little obsolete. I mean, nobody really fights over the Third Amendment. I mean, there's definitely things we don't have to focus on.
What if somebody needs to be quoted?
I'm saying, so last time we started with the preamble. So if you guys are interested, you could go back to last episode and watch that. So what happens right after the preamble? We jump right into Article 1. Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Section 2. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. I am not exactly entirely sure what they're referring to in that one, but it's very clear that there's a difference between that their people are elected by the people, and then they also specify electors, which is not necessarily the same thing. But what's really interesting about this, and you guys will see how this goes, is it's very different setup for how the House of Representatives is elected and how the Senate is elected. So one thing, and I feel like it almost makes sense for me to do that now, even though it's not in exact order, but I feel like this is important. But so guys, Section 3, we're going to skip over the rest of that for a second, but Section 3 says in Article 1, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, right? Chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. So when the Constitution was written, the Senate wasn't voted on by the people of the states. The senators were chosen by the state legislators. So in other words, at that point, you had, let's say Massachusetts. So that state legislature then chose their 2 senators. We didn't get to vote on senators. So that's really interesting. I thought I would just point that out. So we're sort of out of order. But so I don't know. I think that's enough for now. Or do you want to talk a little bit about qualifications?
If you want to talk about qualifications.
All right. So no person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years. Maxwell Frost cut in right there under the wire. And been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. So you have to have been a citizen for 7 years. It's not the same as president, where you have to be natural born. So it's just a whole different scenario. But I think that's good. I think we're good. And then we could address the direct apportionment of taxes when we come back. But I just thought that the idea that senators and representatives weren't all originally elected by the populace. And I thought that was really interesting. Pay attention, because that comes up later, sometime circa, I want to say 1913 or something like that, when it changes. So we'll touch on that. But I just thought that was yeah. I think that tide is changing. I think that a lot of those voters are dying off. And I think
this is what we have to deal with down here, guys.
Yeah.
This is what we have to
This is what we deal with here. But you know what? The time is changing. Those voters are,
first of all,
voters die off by the dozens every year. I know a handful of them that have gone this
past year. And let's be honest. First of all, anyone, with all due respect, Barbara, anyone who actually espouses this idea that Debbie is more likable than Jen, all right, look, you might say that Debbie is more familiar to voters and voters like her, but I've met thousands of people in this area, and I can assure you that Debbie is not likable. She may be likable to you, but
to a very small niche of Democratic voters that vote in a primary.
Correct.
And that is such a small group of people. The majority of people do not at all find her likable. No. It's just a matter of they can't vote in our primary. And that's one of the ways that people like her get to sit comfortably where they are, is because of closed primaries and gerrymandered districts. If the independents and the Republicans were able to vote in our primary, she would have been gone 20 years ago.
And look, it's one thing to, again, as I've often said, it's one thing to just hate Israel or hate Israeli people. It's another thing entirely to believe that Palestinians are human beings and should be treated with dignity. So if that is what constitutes an Israel basher, then I can assure you on good authority that that's what sparks anti-Semitism. So do yourself a favor and recognize that change is going to happen whether you want it to or not.
It does.
You just want to have the right people being able to lead when that opportunity is there.
And those people need to understand something called nuance.
Yep.
And when you blanketly accuse people of anti-Semitism because they're not Zionists, not only are you factually incorrect, but yes, you are stoking anti-Semitism. You are stoking that kind of fire that fuels people around the world, because believe it or not, Jews and Zionists are not the same. That's not the same thing. I know Jews that aren't Zionists, and I know Zionists that aren't Jews. And when you conflate those two things together, all you do is fan the flames of anti-Semitism, especially in parts of the world that don't get our propagandized Western media and does see Israel as an apartheid state. We have a very narrow view here of what that is, and our representative is incapable of having a nuanced discussion. To even talk about it, she'll just throw out the term anti-Semitism at you. Like you can't even have a discussion about it. That's not the kind of representation we need. We need people that can actually have reasonable, nuanced discussions and understand that sometimes, even though it's your side, sometimes you're not right. Sometimes you need to relearn a little history.
Barbara, if you want to support Debbie, go ahead. And that's your prerogative. That's fine.
This is why they'll crush me. Yeah, maybe. And you know what, Barbara? If that's the hill I die on, I'm good with that, because
I'm not.
On the moral perspective,
I'm not good with it.
Well, that's your prerogative. I am a Jew that has been brainwashed for most of my life by Zionist principles. I feel used by them. I feel very manipulated, and it's very infuriating. And
Barbara's also probably not aware of how much the district lines have changed.
Well, that's fine too. Yeah, we lost a lot of the Jews in our district, Barbara. But that aside, if I have to die on the hill of being a Jew that's standing up for actual Jewish values and Jewish principles and not Zionism, then that's fine. Then that's where I'm meant to be, because the reality is it's taken me a lot of years to deprogram, and it is very, very difficult. It wasn't like learning Santa Claus isn't real. It's like learning he's a mass murderer. And that's what it has been for me, deprogramming myself. So no, I am not an Israel basher. I love Israel. I've spent time there, and it's very unfortunate to me that I feel this way. It's not an easy thing. And if you watched any of the series that we did, or any of the show on deconstructing Zionism, which, by the way, that series is continuing. I'm going to try to schedule the third Saturday of every month to have a guest on and talk specifically about that, because unlike some people, I find nuance important. And I think proper education on facts is important. And as Jewish people raised in the West, we were not taught proper facts, period. We were not taught about the Nakba. We were not taught that. And so making policy decisions and Debbie Wasserman Schultz having an opinion on something that's not based on actual facts is, to me, reprehensible, irresponsible, and unprofessional. It's like malpractice. So we're making policies based on not actual facts. How is that a good thing? And then to just call out people as anti-Semitic because they're wanting to discuss facts. That's like a child throwing a temper tantrum and holding their breath because they can't have a discussion about something. It's ridiculous.
Well, you're not serious about winning if you're going to run again. If this is going to allow it to become the primary topic. And I do agree with that, because if it is the primary topic, you won't win. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a litany of other things that are of immense importance that do matter, like being able to survive in this world, which Debbie doesn't care about. Jen does, and we need better representation. It's going to take time. You know, like somebody we met this evening who definitely took a shine to Jen, but I'm sure if she knew that there was anything regarding, you know, deconstruction of Zionism taking place, she definitely wouldn't vote for Jen, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I think that population is dwindling, and our new district lines do indicate that to some extent. And it is what it is. I'm tired of the mental gymnastics. I'm just a person, and I'm not going to sit there and blow smoke up people's ass and say
I find it always so interesting, because Barbara said last show that she would vote for you if you ran again. I don't know about that. It doesn't really seem like you like Jen very much, and yet you're here. So.
I know, I don't get it. But you know what? It comes down to when we know better. I always feel like when I know better, I'm going to do better. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't have car seats. It just wasn't a thing. So does that mean that we shouldn't do that now when we know it's better? And I think that when we learn about things, and I think one of our strengths is Jewish people, quite honestly, and the resiliency and the strength of Jewish people is in certain moral values. And to me, one of those is education. And when we know something now and we have new information that's presented to us, we have an obligation to reevaluate a position. And the fact that Jews in so many regards, like what you're saying, are so refusing to do so. First of all, it's a disservice to Judaism. It really is. And it's quite embarrassing. When people present you with new information and you refuse to incorporate that, that's called willful ignorance. I actually have fired a few friends for that over the past few years. It's one thing when you don't know, but when you purposefully refuse to incorporate new factual information, yeah, it's hard for me to respect that. So, and if that's the issue for people, that's the issue. I'm who I am. It is what it is.
So we don't have a schedule set up yet for the following week. I don't have anything in particular set up for Halloween. That'll be interesting. Maybe we'll do like a spooktacular day of some kind. And then of course, we will be doing an election day coverage. I will actually speak on the Talmud at some point. Actually, I'll do better than that, Metalopoly. I'll get somebody on. I'll have a rabbi come on and talk about the Talmud. How's that? How's that? Because there is some good stuff in there. I still think we should try to get a rabbi local, but that's me. There aren't any. That would come? No. Not here. So we are also going to be having on Beth Macy. Sorry. Yeah, we're going to talk about dope sick, which is a very important topic regarding how big pharma. I don't need to go to synagogue to know you. I don't need to go to synagogue in order to be Jewish. I don't need to go to synagogue in order to understand what's right and what's wrong. I do that just fine from here. Barbara, I can assure you, Jen is very in touch with the Jewish community, like exceptionally. Oh, Barbara. You'd be surprised. Pretty much right in there. You'd also be surprised what they actually think versus. You know, it's funny. It's like what Hillary Clinton said. I have a public position and a private position. As much as that is disgusting to say, that's actually how a lot of people are. Not me, though. No. Actually, not me. But there's a lot of people Same person everywhere who share sentiments regarding this particular issue, let's say, and will say one thing in public and say another thing in private. I can't play that game. I just can't play that game. So I say what I say, what I believe, I say what I feel. I've done a lot of soul searching on this. It's taken me very many years. I'm 51 and I'm very comfortable and resolute in my position on this right now. So unless somebody is giving me new factual information, it's not really something I care to debate. It is what it is. And it's one of those things, but I am very in touch with Jewish people, both in my family, both in my area. I live in a very Jewish area. Like you said, I grew up in the second largest Jewish ghetto in this country. I am a second generation native Jewish Floridian. I assure you, if I played Jewish geography, you'd be amazed. I am very in touch with the Jewish community, I assure you, and the Jewish Community Center and the synagogues and rabbis and all of that. I have family members that have built synagogues down this area. Actually, I have a family member who built the Chabad right up the street from me.
Did you know that? My cousin Jerry was one of the people that built the Chabad and plantation. So I assure you,
Fascinating.
I am very well entrenched in the Jewish community. I just don't agree with their position on Zionism. So
It's just fair.
That's what it is. And if you think that's an all or nothing proposition, that's very unfortunate for you, because Jews are not, we're not one person. We're not a little microcosm of one person. There's a whole bunch of us with different opinions and different thoughts. And last night, this was very interesting. I even called Peter to tell him this. I was on a Zoom call with Jewish Voice for Peace. And Jewish Voice for Peace, if you guys aren't familiar with it, please look them up. They're really just a minute. No, Barbara, I won't admit that. You don't know anything about me or my mission or my politics or what I'm trying to achieve. And I feel like every campaign that I run has purpose and soul and mission and service. And to me, that is the value. And that's what I'm about. So I don't agree with that. And, you know, you are entitled to your opinion on that. But no, I do not agree with that. I think that I don't do anything for stunt. I do everything to further the mission of transforming politics into service and helping the least of these. That's everything I do. So if I did that to use my platform knowing that I can't win, yeah, would I do it just to raise voices for people? Absolutely. But that's not a stunt. That's actually using a platform. It would behoove more people if they requested their own representatives use their platforms. Why isn't our representative using her platform to fight for everyone to have health care? Why isn't she standing out on the picket lines with people that are fighting for a living wage? She's their representative. Where's she? So, you know, I think that anything I do to add a voice to the people that don't have a voice and to bring up these issues and use my platform, as small as it may be, yeah, I'm going to do it. And it's not a stunt. And maybe it'll give people an idea of what their representative could look like, because I haven't seen her out there fighting for anything other than herself. So I don't know what you think representatives are supposed to do, but I think they're supposed to represent. And we don't see that. So that's what we're about. And if that's the message we send, I think that's very successful. That's what I think.
We hope you guys enjoyed.
We're not a monolith. That was the word I'm looking for.
Somebody who actually wrote that.
Okay, good. That's what I meant. We're not a monolith. And Judaism existed long before Zionism. And Judaism will very well exist long after Zionism. And they are not the same thing. And the Zionists used us for their profit, for their agenda. And I know better now. And it's that simple. I love Israel. I love the people that live there. I love the land of it. But geopolitically, it's a problem. And people need to be willing to discuss that.
We hope you guys enjoyed. We appreciate any and all support that you provide. Make sure to smash that like button, share, subscribe. Maybe go to patreon.com/generational change or Cash App if you are so inclined to support us. Again, I will say this: what Metaopoly just said is a direct correlator to what I've been saying.
Yeah.
So
it's sort of like when you keep putting yourself. Yeah.
That's what it is.
I know. When you keep saying things. Well, and the chosen people thing. By the way, I have a Catholic friend who very much believes that. So that isn't just that. That's a very biblical thing. So
Sure.
It isn't just a Jewish thought process of being chosen. And I think that a good rabbi could interpret that in any possible way. But any sort of like we're deserving of something that no one else is deserving kind of mentality doesn't help us. It doesn't help us. It's not, and the truth is it's not based on Jewish principles. Jewish principles are standing for the oppressed. Jewish principles are fighting for justice. Like people, I think we've lost sight of what that really means to be Jewish. And at that meeting that I was on last night, Jewish Voices for Peace, there were close to 300 people on that Zoom. And it was so inspiring. And more than half of the people were easily older people. Like more than half the people on there, because I was scrolling through, it was so cool. I don't think I've ever been on a Zoom call that big. And I'd say half the people were like my parents' age. And I felt so pleased to see that there were this many people that were being open to the idea that maybe we've been improperly taught. So guys, check out Jewish Voice for Peace. I'm going to start getting more and more involved with them. I've always liked the organization. And I think it's really important. And by the way, Jewish Voice for Peace is not just a focus on Israel issue. They also focus a lot on Native American issues, immigration issues. They are about standing up for the oppressed. And so it's for peace and for the oppressed. And, they're not happy with how we're running over Ukraine. So Jewish Voice for Peace is more than just Israel-Palestine issues. I want to be clear on that.
Great show. Great conversation with Jordan, as always. Hopefully people will take your message to heart, whether it's Barbara or anybody else who has to understand that the real leaders, the best leaders, are the ones who are willing to go against the grain. Those are the ones. If
I waited until it was really popular to say that, what would that serve?
Nothing.
That's just being civil. It only matters to stick up for things when it isn't popular, because, and I always question, would I be somebody in history if I was alive during slavery, if I was alive during segregation? Would I have been on the correct side of history, or would I have been fearful and gotten in line with the majority? And I'll never know. I'll never know that. But this is that to me. This is that to me. So no, I'm not gonna, if me being Jewish and being outspoken against Zionism is something that could help in any way the long-term movement of progress and lack of oppression of Palestinians or any people, then I'm gonna do that. And it's not gonna be popular. And again, I understand that people find that very unsettling. I find it all very unsettling. I find it unsettling that there's an open air prison of 2 million people.
And there was another round.
I find that very unsettling.
And there was another round of bombing that just happened yesterday, and a bunch of kids were killed. So, it is what it is.
We talked about that a lot last night on the meeting. We had an update about what went on. It was in the West Bank. There was something, and it's when you finally see it, you can't unsee it.
Of course, just like when you can see the corruption of the system and why it is the way that it is. As Jordan Chariton says so eloquently, we live in the United Corporations of America. That is what we live in. And to deny it at all anymore is to literally be, again, this is why the scene in The Matrix, the best scene in The Matrix, is one of the very first scenes, which is you can take the blue pill and you can believe whatever you want to believe, or you can take the red pill and see what the world really is. And as much as people think that they would take the red pill, the truth of the matter is
they wouldn't.
A lot of people, especially with all due respect, Barbara,
people don't know,
would take the blue pill.
It's so much more comfortable.
It is.
It's very uncomfortable to be where I'm sitting.
That's all it is. It's really about comfort. It's about living in that echo chamber, because most people, especially liberals, like to live in an echo chamber. It makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah, I gave up feeling comfortable with this. There's nothing comfortable about it. I have to deal with it. I've processed it, and it's like big girl panties pulled up and stuff. You got to just sort of suck it up and deal with it sometimes. And this is one of those things. And I feel badly about it. It's not like I like that position. It's just like how I feel about Debbie. I don't want to not like her. I wish I had a representative that I thought was doing a good job. I wish I had a representative that wasn't on the corporate payroll. I would love to have that. And then I wouldn't be here. You guys wouldn't know me. We would have never met. A lot of things wouldn't have happened. I'm not doing this because this is fun. This isn't fun. It's not fun for people to hate on me. It's not fun for people to call me anti-Semitic, self-loathing Jew, or any of that shit. None of that's fun. People are so nasty and mean and look for the worst things in you to highlight and put up. I assure you, none of that is fun.
But you would be surprised what people will say on the internet that they would never dare say in person. And that, I think, really says a lot. And with that said, we appreciate you guys. One more time, like, subscribe, share, contribute if you can. We'll see you Monday.